Have you ever stepped into a room and the first thing that happens in your mind are thoughts like, why is she wearing that? Why isn't this drink here? Huh, look at him. He's not engaged at all. And those kinds of judgments. For a lot of people, this is the first thing that happens the minute we step into a room. And for me, it's also the first thing that happens often when I open social media apps, which I do less and less, but still, our first response to the world is often a response of judgment. And today in Sacred Conversations, we're going to talk about honor, what that really means, but from a place that most people don't look at it, because we're going to look at it from a place of honoring ourselves, but also honoring creation, honoring God, honoring the rest of the world. And how can we do that specifically when sometimes it can feel really hard to honor somebody, a politician that you don't agree with today, right? Doesn't even matter what side you're on. But honoring other people can be extremely hard. And what does that mean? That's what we're going to talk about. So, Jaco, what is your thought when it comes to honor?
Yeah, so I'm completely unprepared on this subject, so I really have to think about or sense at least what the word means for me, and it's so much if you say honoring yourself or myself in this case, and honoring the others, honoring the creation. It's so much, and if it comes to creation, it's a more abstract term, but then I can see outside nature, but also culture, everything that's built around us, and the roads and the networks and all the things we can provide. They are provided to us. So that we can live the lives we have. I think that's there are certainly moments that I can really feel thankfulness, grateful for all those things being out there, because if I would provide it all to myself, all those things, it would be impossible. So that's the first thought I have in honoring creation. And if it comes to honoring myself, especially when I think at honoring myself, then the judgments come in.
Yeah. What do they sound like in your mind?
Yeah, am I doing good things? Am I worthy of being in the position I'm in? Am I worthy for my friends, for my family, for you, for my children? So,
What do those what do those thoughts sound like in your mind? Because you're probably not thinking, I'm not sure if I'm worthy for you guys. How does it come out?
what is my contribution to this, to all this? So from my family, so from my parents and sisters, and that's more about, am I allowed to be part of this family? Do I meet the expectations? And am I good enough as a member of this family? And so it comes to all kind of habits and beliefs that are part of our family and of the system. Do I fit in? There are all kind of loyalty aspects to it. I have a very different life from my sisters, for example. Very different from my parents. And do they understand? Can I still fit in?
Honor has a lot to do with these big questions, and specifically the question that you're touching on now, and that is, how do I belong?
Yeah.
How do I belong to this world? How do I fit in? How can I take up space in this world? And this is not the obvious thing, because when we look at the word honor, we think it has to do with approval, with approving ourselves, with being approved, being acknowledged, with stuff like that. But more than anything, it has to do with a sense of belonging, with a sense of it's okay to be me. Now, the interesting thing is, if we look at honoring other people, for instance, I talked about this today with a few people. And a lot of people say, well, I honor a lot of people. There's a lot of people that I honor. That's not what we're talking about here, because the people we choose to honor, that's easy. But can we honor the people that we don't necessarily choose? Can we honor them as a part of creation too? And that brought me back today when I was talking with somebody about this. She asked, yeah, it's kind of okay, I can honor myself, but how do I honor somebody if they're not doing what I ask them to do, for instance? Or how do I honor somebody who doesn't agree with me politically or in a certain other situation, right? And that brought me to the example of our neighbor across the street who did not like us having a rooster. And because we had a rooster, he decided that we were not the kind of people he was going to honor, to the degree that he called the police, he called the animal police, he bullied you, he shoved notes through our mailbox, and it was pretty dark and pretty awful what happened. But the interesting thing is, how do you honor somebody? And this is a question, so it took me 5 years, by the way. This is not something I am good at overnight. Even though with this neighbor, I have no problem now, but there can always be another person who will press those buttons, right? But one of the things I realized in that situation is it hurt me immensely, his behavior. And then I realized I felt very dishonored. And then I thought, but wait a minute. Why am I giving him the power to dishonor me? That was my first thought. I was like, yeah, he can think a lot of things about me, but apparently part of me agrees. And that was actually the saddest thing, to realize that part of me wanted to prove him wrong. And I thought, is it okay that he doesn't understand me? And can I honor him as part of creation as well? Thinking, hey, do you know what? Who knows? You have to suffer a lady across the street who has a rooster, and maybe in your world, that's dishonoring you. So can we honor each other, knowing that there might not be a solution for both of us? And this is what where honoring really gets very complicated, because we feel that the other needs to agree with us, and we feel that we need to be honored in some way, and we make it about us, or we erase ourselves and we walk around life saying, no, I'll honor everybody. And then we cut ourselves out of the equation. And very often I think honor or dishonor has to do with really poor communication and really poor willingness to listen and to understand each other.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I thought it's even more subtle, because especially in this example, we both know, so it was not only hard to honor the neighbors, but even if I wanted, because I wanted to start a communication, because as long as there's no communication, we will not agree on anything, because then there's nothing. Yeah. There's only this case of hate and all kind of weird things happening, but there's no contact, no connection. Yeah. But it seemed to be impossible to find a connection. And I think that was harder than all the other aspects, that there wasn't any possibility to connect, to be in real contact.
Yeah, and the interesting thing that I realized in that situation is because that made you really upset. And I thought, but if I want to honor the other person exactly where they are, then can I honor them in their stubbornness to not want to connect? Because I also felt dishonored in our attempts to connect. But it's really easy to think that, well, I'm trying to connect, so I'm the better person here. And they're the stupid assholes because, hey, we're doing our best here. But what if even in that situation, we can say, hey, let's pause here and look at, can I honor him as much as I want to be honored in the place of, apparently, some people don't want to connect. Can I honor that? This is, by the way, how I eventually got out of this. And again, it took 5 years, but it was 5 years worth getting out of. Because one thing that I realized really early on in this conflict is in every street there's going to be a neighbor that might like me, might not like me. And if I allow other people's thoughts to get to my mood or to get, it got in between us as well, right? It got in between, you were like, let's just kill the rooster and get it over with. And I said, this isn't about the rooster anymore. Has nothing to do with the rooster. So before we kill any rooster, can we just look at what's happening here inside of us? And some people say, wow, what a lot of trouble for a rooster. But it wasn't about a rooster. It was about honoring ourselves, honoring other people, knowing that there's space enough for all of us. And this is something I wrote with one of our clients today. He sent me a beautiful piece about love and about looking at life through loving eyes. And the piece was about can we remind ourselves of where we love and where we are loved? And can we constantly look at the things that we obviously love, like I love you, I love our kids, I love our dog, I love where we live, I love our clients, I love the effect that I get to have on their lives. These are the obvious things. But then the piece went further. Can I love the small things? Can I love the wind outside right now? I really love, it's really, really stormy right now. There's beautiful sunshine and extreme harsh storm winds. There was a tree on the driveway this morning. And can I love the little things? Can I love the roses that are still in the rose garden? And that was beautiful. And I hear a lot of people talking about this, like, I honor what I love. But can we honor, can we use that as an entrance? So can we use that divine love that is flowing through us because of all of this beauty in our lives? And can we bring it into the situations that are not so easy to love, like a neighbor like this? And we have a neighbor here across the street that we don't know too well and might have millions of opinions about us that we might not be aware of. I don't know. There are a lot of neighbors here. We live 10 minutes walking distance from them. So I wouldn't know. Maybe there's a neighbor here too that has opinions about us. There will always be somebody having opinions. Now the question is, can we honor people and their thoughts because there is so much love in our system that we can just be in that place of love and insert it in the places where it is needed most, instead of thinking, oh, but if they don't love me, now I have to cut myself off of all that love. Because we don't. We really don't.
Yeah, I think if you say it like this, it could be understood as, okay, I have to get over it and put my love attitude on. And this is not what you mean.
No, that is absolutely not what I mean. Thank you.
So, because now it sounds very easy. Oh, it's there's trouble here, and now I love the trouble.
Yeah, No, that is absolutely not what I mean. What I mean is that we use these places, like the neighbors across the street who hate our rooster, as not as roadblocks on our way, but as crowbars that just showed us where we still have a wall around our heart, where love can't flow through my system anymore. And that is not an easy thing. It is like when the neighbor started hating on us, I felt unsafe. I felt I didn't want to be home alone at certain times. I felt unsafe in our relationship at a certain point because your fear was so palpable in the house that I didn't know how to be around that. And what I mean by this is, can we use this as the ultimate pause button to look at, wow, I just found where my system doesn't feel safe. So now I can mend my own system. That's what I mean. So now I have seen where I am not in love and honoring the creation that I am. So I found places where my system feels unsafe, where my system doesn't feel honored. I don't need other people to fix that for me. I am not honoring me. I am agreeing with the neighbor. I'm agreeing, apparently. I'm scared. That's interesting because I knew he wouldn't come into our house. And you never really know that, right? Real shit could always happen, of course. There's a lot of real violence in my life as well. But you can't prepare for that. You can't really ever be prepared for that. And the interesting thing is, can we use these scary movies that our mind is making as entrance doors so that we can allow ourselves to feel where we are not in sync with who we know ourselves to be, with who God knows us to be. So apparently there was a mismatch. Maybe that's an easier way of looking at it. There was a mismatch between how I was looking at myself and how God is looking at me. God being an unconditional loving force that is just lovingly observing how I'm growing. Just like that is, I believe God to be a force that is just putting life out there, and if it is even able to witness it, then that is a force that is just viewing how beautifully we are finding our way back to that God force and how we can unlimitedly expand our reach, unlimitedly expand who we're meant to be, unlimitless expansion of our potential. That God force is flowing through me. So if I in the conflict with a neighbor like that, feel that I can't see myself through those eyes, then I just found an opportunity to expand. Is this a little bit more clear?
Yeah, but still, I think it's not obvious how you do this, because if you try by neglect your judgments, it will not work.
No.
So it's judgment about first the others and maybe about yourself, and having all kind of doubts can even be painful. So it's not just pushing it away.
It's not pushing it away. It's not neglecting it. It's not saying, oh, apparently there's something I don't agree with. You know what? I'm going to love my neighbor from now on. That's not what it's about.
Or yourself even.
Or yourself. No, so what I did is I grabbed my journal and I started writing letters to God. Really I still have those books. Really writing letters around what is going on? Why is this happening? What is it that I am not seeing? I know there is something inside of me, but all I feel right now is pure hatred. All I feel right now is pure disgust, unsafety. This is what I'm feeling. And in the writing of those letters, I allowed myself to feel all the panic, all the anxiety, all the disgust, all the hatred, and I was just writing if what I was encountered in my system with is the judgment of these people. I was judging them so harshly. I was judging myself so harshly for judging them. I was judging the world. I was looking at, why am I even here? If I feel this unsafe, I don't want to be on this planet. So I found all these emotions and all these feelings, and I allowed myself to feel them, to sit with them, and to look at, where did this start? Because the intensity of the emotions, and maybe that's a good thing to share, the intensity of the emotions was way bigger than a neighbor not liking my rooster.
Yeah, and the emotions are your emotions.
And it was crystal clear, because very often people will say, yeah, but these emotions are really triggered by this case. But the extremity of the emotions was a lot bigger than, it wasn't honoring anything anymore. It was kind of zero tolerance for somebody who couldn't deal with me being different. I couldn't deal with me different. It really touched on a sense of belonging, on a sense of being judged. I can still remember my parents were always judging everybody. They were always judging people. And I was like, okay, and now the judgments are against me. I don't want to be judged. I've tried to live up to all other people's judgments, and I just couldn't hear it. And at a certain point, after years of journaling, I realized, wait a minute, part of me believes that there will always be judgments, and that those judgments will always be negative.
And that the judgments shouldn't be there.
Exactly.
Or
that there could. So that's a good point. What I realized is, as long as there's judgments, there can't be love. That's the big revelation in this 5-year period. As long as people judge me, apparently I'm not loved. So it was proof that I discovered that this was proof of me not being worthy of love. So then they can't be there both. And what I realized is that people can judge me and I can be loved. So it deeply has to do with the unconditional aspect of love. Can I really allow God's love here?
And your own love for yourself. Because it's not only an external.
Yeah, that was not so unconditional at that point yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that there was a lot of conditional love in my childhood. Nobody's fault, by the way. This doesn't necessarily have to do with anybody conditionally loving me or not wanting to love me. There's a lot of that shit going on social media. I don't believe that. I believe my parents really love me unconditionally, and I believe they always have. But I also know that they were deeply traumatized by the Second World War, and that conditions placed on whether or not we will receive love has been flowing through generations. And that hasn't to do with that the love was conditional. I don't believe that. If I look at my grandparents, their parents, there was absolute unconditional love, but they didn't grow up in a place where it was okay to accept everything. So my parents didn't accept a lot of behavior, and they didn't accept a lot of nagging or whining or emotions, and they couldn't accept a lot of things that happened in our childhood, and they couldn't accept that, and they believed that that was unconditional love, because they believed that they were doing us a service by not tolerating certain things. And I do believe boundaries are extremely important for children, but the way I had those boundaries led to me believing that love can only ever be conditional, and if I don't live up to other people's expectations, I am therefore not loved. That is not what my parents tried to teach me. It is what children can easily derive. It's not their fault. It's not my fault. It's what happened. And the minute we start to realize, there were conditions, and I took those conditions as a sign that apparently, as long as there's something wrong with me, I can't be loved, then entirety of life becomes unsafe.
Yeah, and that's some call it your life script. I think it's settled there when you're a child, and then you're gonna live like that. So you're seeing proof everywhere of it.
Yeah, and if I look around in society right now, people are judging everything and everybody left and right. Right? It's kind of like, oh, apparently I was wrong about that person. Apparently I should have judged them. Or there's, we this has been instilled in our culture so deeply. We can't even talk about generational trauma anymore. It is cultural trauma. It is trauma of not belonging. It's trauma of being cut off of God. That's really what I believe it is. God being an unconditional loving force. And if we're cut off of that, then we have no chance. And then we feel that it is that with our judgments, we are making a statement or making a point. And with our judgments about politicians, or about politician being murdered, like just happened in the United States, or about that's good that he was murdered, or that's terrible that he was murdered, whatever side you're on, right? It will make us feel like we belong if we have the right statement, or we belong because, look, I am part of this group. And I believe that there is an incredible scream for deep, unconditional communities at this moment, where we can just know that whatever path we're trying to figure out who we are on, we're loved in our journey. That doesn't mean that all of our behavior will be accepted. That's a different thing. That's a different thing. I will not accept it if our kids murder somebody, but there will be unconditional love for them here as well. And these are two separate things, but in our society, it's so beautiful. I was talking to somebody who studied law, entirely different subject, but it's not. It's the same subject. And we came to the conversation that law doesn't come from us having regulations on behavior. It comes originally, thousands of years ago, from how we were lining up with God. First, the very first initial things around law and courts of justice didn't have to do with justice from a place of that behavior is acceptable because it's in the book here. It had to do with, are you living up to the correct image of God? Is this who you know yourself to be? And that's a very different type of law, but it is originally where we came from.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, we turned it around. So first it was about how can you live the good life, the truth, the beauty and the good things. So it was about morality, and how you could shape yourself or educate yourself, being better and better in this, and that was a matter of honor.
That's honor.
That's honor,
That's honor.
and
Yeah.
now law and justice are more about there are things you cannot do, and
Yes.
it seems like all the rest, as long as you don't um, aren't going over the boundaries that the laws stated, then you're good.
And there's no win in that.
But it doesn't give any direction. It's only a boundary where you cannot go,
Yeah.
but not a direction where you could go.
That you can aspire to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think also we talked about education last week a lot with our clients. And in education, there's also the sense of, or in parenting actually, in raising kids, there's a lot of sense of, I can't have my kids be in the way of my nice life or of my career or of my. And a lot of parents right now are putting a lot of stress around morality on schools, and they're checking if the school lives up to their morals. But school isn't the parent of your kids, you are. And I do believe that school can add a lot in that place, but you can't hand off the parenting to school and then believe that you will get great moral people back to enjoy a nice time with at home. That's not parenting.
Yeah, and there's also what it's not exactly the same, but I think there's still a lot of belief in a lot of parts of society that evil is part of humanity, and that you have to be very set clear boundaries to all kind of behaviors. And of course you have to set boundaries on behaviors, but if it's about allowing your children to express themselves and have emotions, and if you try to think that are evil things that shouldn't be there because that's not good for them later on in life, that they will have negative effects from it. And it's in my opinion the other way around, that if you can have these emotions as a child, like frustration, being really
You'll be a lot
mad,
safer.
rage, that they will be safe persons for themselves and for their environment.
Exactly.
And the suppressing of the emotions that is learned is like a cooking. How do you say this?
Pressure cooker.
Pressure cooker.
Yeah, if we don't
And
learn
that's
to deal with
what
those.
we can see in society
Exactly.
right now if
Yes.
we look at the papers.
Yeah, and not just the bad behaviors, by the way. If we haven't learned to process hatred, to process grief, to process anger, then we can't allow it and we can't regulate it. But also if we haven't learned to process love.
Yeah.
If we haven't learned to process receiving and care, and if we haven't learned to process these emotions, then we will stop them before they hit us. And that leads to a very distant community where we can't touch each other, and we literally can't touch each other right now. And as much as I do believe that it is incredibly important for women who were raped to not be touched all the time, that's a whole different thing. It's also not safer to never be touched. Both are true. So can we grow a community where we can aspire to who we want to be, where we're looking at each other through divine eyes with honor for creation, and can we help each other rise instead of constantly try to look at, oh, if you're doing like that, I'll chop your head off. That's not helping each other rise, that's helping each other fall. So that if 10 people around me fall, then I can feel risen. That's not honor. It's not self-honor. It's not honoring others. And it's incredibly hard because it's easy to walk around the street and just smile at everyone until somebody says, "What the fuck are you doing? I don't like your smile." And then how do you respond to that?
Sure.
Yeah. So in this conversation, we might not have the ultimate solution other than that it does start with us, and it does start with just writing a few notes and looking at, where is this triggering me? By the way, if any in this conversation triggered you, I strongly recommend you take our secret self-betrayal test. You will find it on sabotagerelief.com. It's about self-betrayal, and the domain is still Sabotage Relief. I'm sorry about that. But the quiz is on sabotagerelief.com. And you will find 14 simple questions. And within 14 questions, you will find one pattern that might be taking you out when it comes to this. Because none of us have had an unconditional childhood. And somewhere down the line, I believe childhood was never meant to be unconditional, maybe even, right? I mean, if it was meant to be unconditional, then why did this society end up the way it is? Maybe it was always our human task to have conditions in place so that we could find our way back to unconditional God's love. Maybe that was always the reason why we're here.
Yeah, and to be honest, I people who say that they can unconditionally love something or someone or their kids always, I think, I don't know if I believe them, because it's not that easy and it's not that common.
No,
so
but there is a layer. Because I get you. I sometimes absolutely get so angry at our kids, but there is always a foundation of unconditional love within that anger. There is that thread will never break. And I know now that was the same with my parents. I didn't experience that as a child, but I really feel that golden thread of unconditional. That is why we get so angry at our kids. because that thread can't be broken. That's exactly the problem. That thread is there. Now, can we always express it? That's a different thing.
Yeah, and can we do it at the same time? So, what you say triggers me in a way that I can see that in the end, it's unconditional love, but in the moment, yeah. So
in the moment, it doesn't always look like that.
No. So as well as I look at my parents, how they behave or treat me. And the other way around towards my children. Yeah, in the moment it's not always only love.
No, it's really hard. And I really believe that if in those hard moments we can find our way back to the unconditional love of God in us, then we can be curious again. And then we can bring back a curiosity of, I am so angry right now. There must be something that I am not seeing right. There must be a very foggy filter in my brain, because I don't believe this is how we want to treat each other. I really believe there's a misunderstanding that I am unwilling and unable to see in this moment. Can we get back to this next week? And I believe that type of conversation will help both people rise. We've done this for years. This has led to, so Jaco and I had 2 kids after a year and a half, and we were willing to kill each other after those first 2 years. And I believe that in this meeting of, okay, I know there's something sticky on my filter, but I'm not willing to just check my filter. You need to check yours first, until I realized, wait a minute, no, even if you don't do anything, I am not willing to walk around in life with this dirt on my filter. So I'm going to brush my lens clean. But that's incredibly hard because we don't see so many people doing this.
And I think it's the same process, like you
Yeah.
earlier said in this episode, is that you say it's easy to honor the things that you really love. So
Yeah.
that's the first step.
Yeah.
If you not really on
That's
very-
step one. Step one is build a foundation of easy love.
the things that you already love, and even when you're in a bad relationship at some moment, that you can see the things that are still there, that you
Yeah.
think they're lovable. And that's the first step, to come to the little things, and then also to all the other things that might upset you sometimes, but can you honor them as well?
Yeah. So no solace necessarily in this call today, but I do hope this has sparked some insights. And if you're struggling in this, take the quiz or send us a DM for a sacred reset. There's still a few spaces left this year. And I really, really, really believe that if we can get these parts in place in the world, that world peace is possible. I really believe that. I also believe that in today's world, we need islands of this kind of unconditional love walking through it. And that is what I aspire to be. That is what we aspire to be with our company. That is what our students come to learn here. How can I be what I want to see in the world? And that is an incredibly complicated task. If that is in your calling, let us know, because we're here to help. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and let us know your thoughts. Share this, tag people, and as always, please rate us on your favorite podcast app. Bye.
Bye.